you are love and you are loved, and love is unfolding for you. Community is unfolding for you. Creativity is unfolding for you. What you seek is seeking you. I promise you that. What you desire is desiring you. And you are so whole, and you are so loved, and you are so precious and divine, and we need you as you are, and we also need you in your truth and in your power. You've lived the story you've lived for a reason. The stories you've lived, let me not reduce you. You are irreducible, you are divine, and you are forever part of the collective, and the collective is forever part of you. Hello, divine being. Hello, soul sibling. Hello, sunshine. Welcome or welcome back to the Soul Salon. I am so excited to be with you. Settle in, settle down, whatever you're doing. I'm grateful to be doing it with you today. I want to speak to all my fellow worst case scenario thinkers, okay? Feelers, dreamers, the people who we are always trying to protect ourselves by picturing the worst and imagining that that's exactly what's going to happen, and then living our lives accordingly to try and sort of paradoxically protect ourselves. The reason why it's a paradox is because we're living in the worst case scenario, we don't allow ourselves to take action in alignment with the best case scenario, which is also always and already possible. If we think of the infinite timelines that are available in the quantum field, what could go right is just as possible, okay, in so many ways. When we think of our dreams, when we think of our friendships we want to create, the communities we want to foster, the things we want to create, it's so important to remember and to bring in the frequency of what is possible. And so what I really want to focus on today is a question that I often ask myself whenever I am trapped in this worst case scenario mindset, you know what I mean? And what I ask myself when I'm saying, okay, what if everyone is going to hate me? Or what if everyone's going to cancel me? What if this person doesn't want me as a friend? I pause, I breathe, and I say to myself, what if the opposite is true? And what I love about this question is if you really contemplate what the actual opposite is, not a kind of close thing that could be the literal opposite. So for example, when you're thinking to yourself, oh, if I share myself online, I'm going to get canceled. You say to yourself, what if the opposite is true? What if I don't get canceled? No, babes, let's go more opposite. What if people love me? You know, what if people shower me with deep compassion, gratitude, and love, and in turn, I continue to do that towards them? If you are thinking and you're in public, this happens to me all the time, and maybe you see someone and you're like, oh, I kind of want to say hello, but then I'm going to get rejected, or they don't want me to go up to them, or look, they're on their phone, they're busy. You convince yourself, oh, they don't want to talk to me. I'd be annoying them. What if the opposite is true? What if they secretly want to say hi to you? I'm certain that in the universe of possibilities, I just wonder how many times this has happened, where there's been people in public who have had eyes on each other, but just neither has been brave enough to say hello. And I totally empathize with that, given how risky it can feel and how isolated we tend to be from one another. Another example is I have this theory that there are so many friends in the universe, in the world, who are secretly in love with each other, but neither is brave enough to confess to the other. Oh my goodness, this would be such a good documentary, I'm telling you. And so the one friend is thinking, oh no, if I confess my love or romantic love for this person, I mean, friendship is a form of romantic love in my mind. I have podcast episodes on this that you can go listen to and watch, and it is a topic that I'll continue to revisit. But what I mean to say is they're seeking a sexual romantic relationship if they are sexual people, and they are scared that it's going to like ruin the friendship, and they don't want to confess their love, and so they don't. But what if it's not that this person was going to reject you, but they were also going to be like, I'm also in love with you? I bet that would happen so much more in the world if we made it safer to just express different forms of love towards each other. Anyways, what I want to really let settle in, sink in, seep into our consciousness, because we have the collective consciousness that we are a part of, and that is a part of us, right? The consciousness pulsating through us, between us, and what I want to let sink into that is this idea that sometimes this worst case scenario that we are so certain is going to unfold, it's actually that certainty that's also contributing to the unfolding. What do I mean by that? When you act as though bad things are going to happen, what kind of energy do you put into the universe? What kind of risks do you refuse to take? What kind of actions do you refuse to take? Because you're convinced it's going to go wrong. Let's say you've dreamed of posting on TikTok. You feel like, oh, I'm definitely going to get dragged, humiliated, or ridiculed. So then maybe you do post on TikTok, but you post something safe, right? You post something that you feel like is non-controversial. And then what happens? It's not something that deeply resonates with people because you're not giving your all to it. You're not embodying someone who literally thinks, no, people want to hear what I have to say. People care about my my stories. People care about the random thought I had on a Tuesday, because that's how so many videos that do well, that's what they are. It's someone saying, you know what, someone might care about this, and then sharing that truth, and then a lot of people often resonating with that truth. So we need to understand that we carry an energy in accordance with the future that we see for ourselves and for each other. So for example, if we as a collective are like, oh, it's not possible for us to improve the world or to change the world, or it's futile, or it's just like, what is even the point? So much is going wrong in the world. And I do empathize with that again. There's so much heartbreak that we are all witnessing and experiencing and living at this exact moment, with Palestine, with Congo, with Sudan, and also just with the global world order, and with climate change, and with racism and all the things, capitalism and all the things. And at the same time, if we collectively don't believe it's possible to improve things, and we just say, well, it's already a lost cause, then we'll never act as though we think it's possible to improve things. And I love, it's one of those quotes that just will always be with me. I learned it very young and I'll never forget it, is the Nelson Mandela quote: it always seems impossible until it's done. And so I have a whole soul session on possibility. But what this soul session is really intended to invite us into is a question, an intervention that we can use in our day-to-day lives when we are stuck in this worst case scenario thinking. You could even do a journal exercise where on the left-hand side you write all the things you think are going to go wrong, and then you say, okay, what if the opposite is true? And then you write all the things that could go right, or all the ways that the assumptions you are making may actually not be the case. Because it's not only about possibility, but it's also about assumptions that we are making about even projects we're embarking on. So for example, the idea that it has to be perfect, that's an assumption we make. And Rubin's book speaks about how we accept all these implicit rules from culture, from our craft, from the mediums that we create on. But what if the opposite is true? He has a chapter on that that's very short, on the creative version of this. So let's say if you say, oh, I have to make a 45-minute podcast episode. You say, what if the opposite is true? What if I need to make a 2-minute episode? You know what I mean? Oh no, I have to do interviews and yet they stress me out. What if the opposite is true and actually it's okay to have solo episodes? That was my experience. I thought, okay, to have a podcast meant I had to do interviews. I didn't have the space to do them yet, and I still don't. And I'm excited I'm just honoring the phase that I'm in, but I am looking forward to that phase. But essentially I was like, what if the opposite is true? What if I could just chat? You know what I mean? And people might vibe with that too. So I want to read you a list that I wrote of moments or experiences that I could come up with that speak to this idea of when we sometimes assume kind of the opposite of what is actually possible. So this is the list. Let me go grab it for you. Okay, so the first one is when you're in a public place and you want to go up to someone, but you think to yourself, they probably don't want to be interrupted or greeted. They could be even in a group. They probably don't want me to infiltrate their group. What if the opposite is true? What if they've actually just had a conversation about how much they're looking to make new friends, but it's so difficult in the city? Everyone says that, whatever city they're from. And so there's always that possibility that what you seek is seeking you. That's the exact energy that we're talking about. It's that it's not one-sided. Sometimes we are part of a bigger chorus that we think we are a lone voice within. Oof, powerful. Okay, the second example has really been part of my life. So I started creating on TikTok 3 years ago, and this has been my biggest teacher in terms of what if the opposite is true. Because I had this fixated in my mind that everything was going to go wrong. I was inevitably going to be cancelled, dragged, ridiculed, and everyone was going to be laughing at me both offline and online. And what has unfolded, the opposite has unfolded. I've received so much love and support and connection and just community, and it's been so wonderful. 2 of my best friends I've met through TikTok, and so it's been like the literal opposite. And I think that is why I feel so passionately about this idea, because I'm living the opposite. And that's not to say I'll never be cancelled or ridiculed or dragged, but so much love has happened that even if that does happen, it would still be worth it to me. I mean, it's hard to say that because there's uncertainty. I don't actually know how my future self will feel about this. I don't want to claim to know that, but I guess where I am right now in my current understanding and perspective is that I've just loved the way that I have received love from my community, from my audience, from you listening, and I feel so fulfilled and so lit up that I feel the complete opposite of what I was imagining would happen. Like I was imagining the hate comments and the hate ratings and the hate this, but actually it's been so loving. And so I think that's why I care so much about this idea, is like, if I really hadn't allowed myself to be like, you know what, I am afraid of this happening, but I'm still going to do it anyway, I wouldn't be living in the reality that I'm living now with respect to creating and sharing myself and building a community. So that's why I want to offer that to you. I want to give a sub-example of this that is also really resonant for me. I think part of the vulnerability or fear of sharing yourself online is that you're also facing people in your real life whether you are still in touch with them or not, judging you as well. So like people you went to school with and so on. And so one big limiting belief I had was that what if everyone in my life who knows me, that's not my close friend, is laughing at me? I think we all feel that resonant image of just like a bunch of kids laughing at us and saying, look how cringe you are, look how embarrassing you are, look how few things of importance you have to say, or whatever your insecurities are, you kind of project that onto what you think people are thinking of you. And so I had this real fear about like people that I did know, even leading me to create a separate Instagram account, separate from the account where that I grew up with, right? I'm really glad I did that. But at the same time, whenever I have that feeling of cringe of like, oof, what if someone I know sees this and they're like judging me for it? I think, you know what if they're inspired by what I'm doing? And that's what I mean by the opposite. Don't say, what if they're not judging me? That's too on the nose, bestie. We're going to take it a step further. Not what if they're not judging me? What if they're inspired by what I'm doing? What if they feel more encouraged to share themselves because of how I'm sharing myself? What if they feel more encouraged to be bold? What if they enjoy just listening to me? I've received messages from people in my life that I had no idea listened to my podcast or watched my videos, and they're like, thank you so much for this. Or someone I went to college with who I haven't spoken to in years is like, it's so nice to see you sharing yourself like this, and I learned so much from you. And it honestly gives me chills because I didn't think that was possible. All I assumed was the worst. So again, I made a video once about how we don't only hold limiting beliefs about ourselves, we also hold limiting beliefs about each other. We always assume the worst in each other. We always say they're judging me, they hate me, they're not gonna like what I have to say, they're gonna ridicule me, and that's really unfair. It's unfair to the collective because we also are all kind of looking for people to support and to love. Like there's so much love on the internet. I know there's so much hate as well, but there's also so much love. And that is this frequency that I'm trying to bring in. So when we're stuck in the mindset of like, what if everyone is laughing at me? And I know this does indeed happen. I'm not trying to say these negative things don't happen, but what if we just allow ourselves to just play with the idea? Like, no, what if I become someone who in my community, people are like, oh, partially because of them, I actually took this step in my life and I'm so grateful. Maybe even at the time I judged them, I was jealous of them, or I criticized them. But as I did some deeper work, I was like, oh my word, the reason I'm judging them is because I want to do what they're doing. I want to invite myself into allowing myself to be a beginner at something, to try at something, to get 100 views on something. Like that's brave, Obviously I'm coming from a perspective of sharing yourself online, but whatever you're doing, if you want to be a dancer and you take dance classes, I have a friend who's embarking on that journey and she's just like going to these dance classes and it's hard and she feels like, oh my word, it's overwhelming because she's a beginner and everyone in the class is maybe more advanced. But how inspiring is that? That's so wonderful. It's so inspiring to allow yourself to be a beginner, and I'm learning from her and she's encouraging me just in these actions she's taken to have a more beginner's mindset of like, what am I not allowing myself to try? What am I not allowing myself to do? So anyways, that's an example of allowing ourselves to try. And we don't even know the impact that will have on other people. Like she doesn't know that her learning to dance is inspiring me to learn to do things and just like practice things and try things. And so we don't know our impact. Often before I post a TikTok or a podcast episode, I'm like, people are going to hate this. People are going to criticize this. At minute 17, I said this and they're going to drag me for it. And then they're like, oh my word, thank you so much for this episode. It really spoke to me. Like keep going. And I'm like, oh my goodness. What if the opposite is true? What if people are not secretly looking to criticize every word you say? What if they actually are seeking voices to support and they're grateful to have found you as one of them? You know what I mean? Like it's possible. I've had so many TikToks where I was like, I could swear they were going to go negatively viral and then they did not. Okay, let's take it offline. Let's take it away from the space of online content creation and into the real world. So what are more examples of when the opposite can be true and when this question can be supportive to us? The next example is with respect to texting culture, because I know we all are waiting for someone to text us back or feeling bad that we haven't texted someone back, and both and neither, whatever it is. So one of them is like they're mad at me or they're ignoring me for not texting me back. I know this can be very painful and this is a whole larger conversation, but what if the opposite is true? What if they're not mad at you or ignoring you? What if they feel so kind of secure in the friendship you have? This is like your Delulu best friend. Yes, I am. What if they feel so much security in the friendship that you share that they actually feel safe in taking their time to respond from a place of abundance when they are more ready to, because life gets busy and so on, than responding from this place of obligation and pressure? That is a possibility. Or what if they're not mad at you at all? What if they're busy and it has nothing to do with you? That's another way you could use the opposite. What if it's like not about you at all? What if they're going through something completely different? What if so many what ifs could be possible that we could invite ourselves into when we feel like we're not being responded back to. What if this is an invitation to just send another text, even if we may feel like, oh, I don't want to double or triple text. I know this is a painful conversation, so I'm not going to do it justice right now, but just an invitation to maybe ask yourself, what if I'm centering myself and it's actually not fair to them because it's maybe not even about me? Another related one that I think is so fascinating. So I had a podcast interview lined up and I'm really excited for this guest to come on, but I was behind in reading the book. So I had to kind of cram to read the book. So I had it on my schedule, but it was really stressing me out. I was like, this is not really the energy that I would like to read this book in. And I was feeling like, I can't cancel. We've had this on the schedule for like 4 months. And so I was feeling like, I really would prefer to do this in another time. But I feel like, this guest is very busy. They specifically requested a time further out in the year versus I reached out to them last year. And I was like, well, I just have to read this book this week. And then that Monday morning, who sends me an email, the guest, saying, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. Can we please reschedule this meeting to further in the year? And so it was such a beautiful example. She was apologizing and stuff. And I was like, you know what? This is such an amazing example of how we feel so bad to cancel. But what if that person actually would love to have the time that they would gain back? And I think often we're so apologetic. I'm so sorry to cancel this call or this meeting or this coffee. And then sometimes we don't realize that person may also feel they also wanted to cancel in a way. And they feel a certain kind of relief that they get to have that time and that you can reschedule. This is also part of a bigger conversation because I do think that there comes a time when it can be really hurtful when someone is always, they call it like flaking on you or canceling or rescheduling. I understand that perfectly. I think that's really true. It's a nuanced conversation, but there are those select moments where we're not able to show up the way we want to show up, or life got in the way, life got busy, and we need the space to cancel. And what if the person's not going to be mad at us or resentful, but instead relieved? I always respond this. I always say, thank you for honoring your boundaries, because in turn you've allowed me and invited me to honor mine. And I think that's so true. We're role modeling for each other what's possible. When someone says, I'm feeling unwell, like, can we please reschedule? And the other person might also be feeling unwell and felt like they didn't have the right or the space to reschedule. So that's an example. Again, bigger conversation, but I wanted to just invite you into that again. The next example is the assumption that conflict will tear us apart. If I bring this up, if I have the difficult conversation, something will be broken, something will be ruptured between us. And as we know, what if the opposite is true? What if this conflict brings us closer together, brings us into deeper alignment, intimacy, and integrity? What if I learn something about them through sharing my truth, because I also get to learn theirs? What if I learn something about myself and why actually this means so much to me? Like, what is this actually about? What am I valuing? What do I feel is kind of out of alignment, so that I can come into deeper truth and honesty with myself as well as with this person? So that reframe from this conflict will break us up to this conflict will bring us together, or even bring us into a deeper truth. So some friendships and relationships really must end, as in it has come the time. So if I bring this conflict up, maybe the more loving possibility will unfold. But I think the direct opposite is just that often we think conflict is something that ruptures a relationship, and we don't realize that if we're able to hold conscious conflict, loving conflict, then it can actually bring us into a very deep and juicy intimacy. I think about this a lot. Conflict, the way we only have conflict with people that we are close with, that has to be a symbol, a sign that conflict and relationship are intertwined, that we fortify our closeness to one another by being truthful about the experiences we have with each other that do rub us the wrong way, or feel hurtful, or feel like our boundaries have been encroached on in some way, or we feel out of alignment with. So conflict, meaning that con meaning with, confidant, confidence, conjunction. So I think that there's this special thing where we need to realize that it's only twigs that are close that are going to have a little fire between them. You know what I mean? So yes, conflict can bring us closer to each other. The next, what if the opposite is true, is I want to reach out to them, but it's been so long, they don't want to hear from me. Babes, what if they miss you too? You know what I mean? What if they miss you in ways they don't even realize? And when they read your text, they'll be like, oh my goodness, wow. And they may even have just been thinking about you. That happens so often. I had a friend who I hadn't spoken to in years reach out to me. She was like, I just was thinking of you. I miss you. Let's catch up. And there's a world in which she was like, oh no, she doesn't want to hear from me. I was loving, I'm trying to stop saying dying. I was loving to hear from her. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. That's because I feel like words carry energetic frequency, and I just don't want to bring that into my world. And so I'm trying to remove death kind of language, like, oh my God, I'm dying to hear this, or I'm dying to see you, or I can't wait to see you. I'm trying to words have power in the universe. And so I want to be in a divine and sensual and beautiful relationship with the words that I use. And so I want to stop using language like that. But I'm excited to reconnect with her. And I'm so glad that she believed it was possible, that I did want to hear from her and I did feel the same. Sexy, beautiful, wonderful, perfect. Okay. The next one is, it's just always going to be this hard. This is so hard. This is so tough. I'm struggling so much. And this is just how it's always going to be. I often tell myself nothing is permanent. This too will pass. And what if the opposite is true? Like, what if this is temporary? What if I even look back on this experience as like, wow, even though it was painful, I needed to go through this in order to learn that. I don't want to glorify suffering. I don't want us to suffer. So I don't always think that's the right lesson to draw. But I do think there are these experiences where we take what we can from them, and we also recognize that they are temporary. I have two left. The one is, even when we're in a conversation, maybe you're in a group conversation, you're struggling to get a word in. It's one of those conversations where it's just difficult. You maybe have something you want to say, but you silence yourself. Maybe you're more of a listener. You say to yourself, you know what, like, I'm just going to be more in a passive role in this conversation and listen to these people have this conversation without me. And we think to ourselves, no one values what I have to say. And inviting ourselves into the opposite view of like, people value my voice and perspective, and also I value my voice and perspective, so I deserve to be heard. With respect to that, something I think about a lot is how different cultures and families have different relationships to conversation. So I get really annoyed, honestly, when someone in conversation just speaks and speaks and speaks, or in a group just speaks and speaks and speaks. But what I've invited myself into seeing is like, some people grew up in homes where they were so used to, if you have something to say, you'll interrupt me. And they were also so used to having to fight to speak. So they speak and they kind of are clinging to that airtime because they're so used to someone cutting in and speaking over them. I have a lot more compassion now for that behavior. That might not even be someone's truth, but it just took me from a hyper judgmental, why would anyone take up so much space in a conversation to, okay, maybe we have some different cultural conditioning or stories around how a conversation is supposed to go. Another nuanced conversation, because we do need to make space for each other, but it's just helped me be less in a hypercritical, and therefore also just that negative energy that I then feel because I'm now resenting them, and then now I'm kind of more at peace with it. I'm like, not necessarily that my way is the way. It's just how I've been taught to converse and how I prefer to converse, which is also fine. I don't have to find alignment in conversation with everyone. The final example that I have for you, and I wonder there must be so much more out there that I wanted to share, is the feeling that I'm not good enough, or I'm not prepared enough, like I'm not qualified enough. And what if the opposite is true in that? What if my whole life has prepared me for this moment? What if I'm the exact voice that this idea needs to speak it? What if I'm the exact hands that this creation needs to craft it? So just inviting yourself to actually not see yourself through the lens of institutions and frameworks and, I'm not old enough or wise enough or beautiful enough, or all of these things that is placed on us by these toxic systems. And just say, like, what if it's me? Not only me, because it's also us, but what if I feel called to this for a reason, and I am prepared enough, and I am good enough, and actually my feeling of not being good enough might even allow me to create with more truthfulness and resonance, because I can always bring that perspective into what I'm creating. We can always make space to name the shame we feel, the inadequacy we feel, the self-doubt we feel, and that's also why we are the right person to do it, because of the authenticity and the honesty and the integrity that we can bring to that creation, the truthfulness and the rawness that we can bring. So I hope that this episode was supportive to you. I hope that you can ask yourself more frequently, what if the opposite is true? What if I am basing my entire actions and orientation towards this project, idea, friendship, relationship, reality in a way that's so rooted in a very narrow conception of what could happen, hyper fixated on what could go wrong, therefore aligning my actions, aligning my energy to that outcome, and therefore also making that outcome more probable? What if it's actually possible that the people I think hate me actually admire me? What if it's possible that this thing that I feel has to be a certain way, I could invite myself to be literally the opposite? I hope this was supportive to you. I love you so dearly, and I hope your soul feels the warmth, the love, the wisdom of this soul session. We will be back, and I cannot wait to be with you again in co-presence and co-community, and I guess that's what community means. So I love you so dearly. You are love and you are loved, and love is unfolding for you. Community is unfolding for you. Creativity is unfolding for you. What you seek is seeking you. I promise you that. What you desire is desiring you. and you are so whole, and you are so loved, and you are so precious and divine, and we need you as you are, and we also need you in your truth and in your power. You've lived the story you've lived for a reason. The stories you've lived, let me not reduce you. You are irreducible, you are divine, and you are forever part of the collective, and the collective is forever part of you. I'll see you in the next soul session. Love you so dearly. Thank you so much. Bye. I hope some paradigms have been shifted for you in today's conversation. As always, if you can, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify. Like, comment, subscribe. I love you so, so much. Okay? I love you. Join me on my Substack. Links in the comment section. Go there. Okay? Love you so much. Love you. Bye.